industry professionals that are joining us today to elaborate on the challenges and driving factors faced within the household good move component of every relocation. First, I want to introduce Mike McGill. Hi, Mike. Mike has 22 years of experience within the transportation industry, the last 18 of which have been spent in management and leadership roles within Mills Van Lines and the ACE Relocation family of companies. We also have Kathleen Baker. Kathleen has been in the household good industry, in the DSP services side, which destination services provider, and in the full service relocation space for nearly 25 years, currently with our own team at Interlink Relocation Resources and Rental Relocation. Thank you both for joining us.
Thank you, Bev. We're excited to be on board here for this.
Yes, absolutely.
Good. So if Alex wouldn't mind removing me from this center stage, I would love to just stay focused right on Kathleen and Mike. So, Mike, when people are actually thinking about moving and storage, what all does that actually mean?
You know, when people think about moving and storage, they think of packing boxes and loading a truck and delivering to a destination residence. In reality, though, there are different schools of thought on how to execute a move. Some carriers subscribe to a geographic service delivery model where they may have a team at origin packing and loading the truck, have the truck go to destination, then have a different team at destination to unload and unpack. And other carriers subscribe to a pack load haul approach, where the crew would stay with the transferee from start to finish. At the end of the day, there's really no single solution for all clients. Buyers of our services commonly have to figure out what the right fit is for them.
Well, can you explain the differences between these models?
Sure. So, you know, when you look at the pack load haul approach, it's locking up team members throughout the course of a move, including the packing of the boxes, loading of the truck, driving to destination, unloading, unpacking. But it's the continual staffing of the same crew throughout. Mm-hmm. If you go with the other approach, the geographic model, you might have dedicated teams in each market that are taking care of those services as they go from market to market. So if you're moving from Atlanta to New York, you might have a team of movers in Atlanta that are handling the packing and the loading, and then a team in New York that are taking care of the unloading and unpacking.
Very interesting. And so for you, Kathleen, from an RMC perspective, how important is a carrier vetting process? Can you share maybe what that might look like?
Absolutely. And for us, and I'm sure for any provider, it's really important. These are extension partners, as I guess we'd want to look at it. But some of the things that we do look for, you know, in addition to the communication level, do the dynamics fit between the two companies to make sure that they're mirroring what we're looking for and what we're looking for and expect. Some very important aspects that we're looking for is that it is that pack, load, and haul aspect, so that single driver is there from the start to finish. It gives helps in the stress level of the families that are relocating to know that driver is going to be there from the start to the finish. They also know what happened at origin, so when they get to destination, it really can help get a jump and be proactive in that end. Also, what's really important is their traffic lanes. We're really looking at that relationship with that particular agent. And if we are selecting traffic lanes that don't fit their model, it could get thrown into the van lines, and we don't know who's going to be hauling it then, and we don't have relationships with those hauling agents like we do with we call the booking agent. And so it's really important to understand what their traffic lanes are, where they're strong at, so we can make sure that the shipments that are coming through to them will match that level. Another area, obviously, is quality scores and drivers ratings. those are huge importance on our end. We're looking for quality when we're dealing with our families that are taking that move to relocate for a company, and we want to make sure that we can give them the best that they have coming to them. And those are a couple of the things that we watch very, very closely when we're vetting for our partners.
Okay, so if I take into and encompass both of your answers, if I am understanding and hearing this correctly, the more pack and haul capability, the more self-haul capability, and having more locations or dots on a map, so to speak, for storing, all of these components, directly or indirectly, have an impact on the cost of the overall move?
That is correct, yes.
Okay. Well, thank you. Do you know, over the last 20 years, we have all seen how the economic state can truly impact this business. Today is even more challenging. First, we had a pandemic. Then that was coupled with this very fast turning real estate market. Corporations and people are paying more than ever for a household good move. Inflation is front and center with us every day. Mike, as it relates to moving and storage, what are you experiencing that impacts this rise in cost?
Sure. I can say, and I think everybody on this call can say, that we're all paying more for goods and services than we ever have before. And that extends not only to our personal purchases, it extends to corporations and government entities. And the moving industry is no exception. I think the first thing everybody thinks about is what they see at the pump. The fuel price is going through the roof. And a lot of people think, well, that could be detrimental to the moving and storage industry. Mm-hmm. But in reality, most carriers have fuel surcharges built into their contracts with their clients. So a portion of those increased fuel costs are covered by way of those surcharges. What isn't covered, and what we're grappling with in the moving and storage industry, is every other part of our service delivery model. Packing material costs have hit historic highs. Insurance costs have jumped 20 and 30% in the last 2 years. Moving equipment like dollies and pads are costing more than ever. We're paying a premium for new truck equipment if we can even get the trucks. And labor costs are through the roof. And specific to labor, there are times when our moving teams go into certain markets and they need to ramp up staffing for origin or destination services. We have certified pools of labor in those markets that they can tap into. And usually the cost is $200 to $250 per day for each staff member. And we're currently paying $400 and $500 a day per person. When you look at all of those factors, the bottom line cost of a move is definitely going to be higher.
Mm-hmm. Well, you just referenced fuel, and fuel can be a major contributor to this cost. I mean, we're paying it ourselves at the pump. Doesn't your industry already have mechanisms in place to really account for these, fluctuations?
We do. It's slightly flawed, I'll tell you. The way we typically account for the fuel surcharge, it's a calculation based off of the national average diesel price, and we capture that information on the 15th of each month, and then we set the surcharge for the next month. So from the 15th of April through the 15th of May, the same surcharge applies. The inherent problem with that model is that any fluctuations after the 15th aren't captured. So if the price of fuel continues to rise, we're trying to catch up in arrears once we reset the surcharge the following month. I think we're going to see some changes in our industry as a result of this. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't be surprised if we see more real-time adjustments to the fuel surcharge, or maybe even a weekly adjustment. Yeah. But we do have that mechanism in place today. I just think it's going to have to be adjusted.
While you have actually been answering this question on fuel, Mike, we have an attendee that has just asked or is stating, I have more international transfers than domestic. With an international move, do these contributors mirror the spikes in what your industry is faced with? And by the way, thank you for sharing that question.
So a lot of what I've just shared is a lot of the domestic impact. I would actually say that international pricing has been exponentially impacted compared to what we're seeing domestically. the same challenges that I've mentioned about packing materials and labor and equipment all still apply to international service delivery. But there are also additional challenges that we face. We are battling a high demand for overseas shipping containers. We're also seeing companies buy out entire freight ships or freighters for their own goods to be shipped overseas. And it's not like they can create a new freight carrier overnight. Those boats take years and years to build. So it's not a quick fix. You can't ramp up capacity. And we're battling against them for that space. And the other thing that's impacting international shipping is some of the worldly events, like what's going on in Ukraine right now, which could impact the route that we have to send a shipment overseas.
Interesting. So while we're also talking, and I think I'm free to mention his name, Vinny's asking and saying, "Hi, Kathleen and Mike. Thanks for everything you do for our industry. With your crystal ball, when will cost be going back to normal? And in addition, what are some of the actions you have been taking to inform the corporations, proactive communication, updated cost estimates?" So he's directing this to you. Thanks, Vinny.
Well, I can tell you, Vinny, I don't know if we'll see a return to normal, but I do think we'll see more stability going forward. And I know I speak for our carrier, our company, but I think I speak for all carriers. We're doing everything that we can to mitigate these cost increases and not pass through anything that we can figure out a way to manage. I think we just have to operate smarter. We have to be innovative. We have to look at alternative methods for transport. How can we, amp up and ramp up our capacity when it's needed, and then still be there when things go a little bit quieter? I think a lot of it has to do with the real estate market. If that tempers down a little bit, then we'll start to see things calm, I think, in the cost arena as well.
Do you have any additional input, Kath? Or I do have another question too.
I see that, and I love that they're coming in. I think I think Vinny's also bringing up an important factor, and that's the communication back to our clients. I think it's really important, on our end. I mean, we get the flow, obviously coming over to our side to kind of pre-alert us to cost going up and things like that. I think it's really important from our end to make sure that we're communicating with our clients and prospects and families on the challenges and the differences going on. I think we're going to hear a little bit more about that even in the corporate housing arena when we get to that session of it. We need to educate them, inform them, and make sure that we can give them the best direction on what to do in the future and how it's affecting everybody. So I think, really communication is one of the biggest and strongest things that we need to make sure that we keep that line going.
Key and critical for sure. Now we do have also Debbie Weiner on, and if she is asking if your rate model is based on a single factor rate, and that's an interesting question because I'm asking, is there one now within certain van line systems? Should the fuel surcharge be applied in the same way? And that's like as if calculated as a percentage of the line haul only. Thanks, Debbie.
I believe that it can be, but it really comes down to contract by contract negotiations and what's been determined between a carrier and their client. But in most scenarios that I've seen, it is typically a percentage of line haul.
Okay. That and thank you for giving her that feedback and all of us that feedback. So, Kathleen, I want to move along on something here because I'm thinking about ways of managing cost, yet not really impacting an employee's experience. We're currently paying, there's a company that's currently paying without any limitations to ship the household good. That company actually came to us and said they were thinking about potentially capping dollars in regards to their forthcoming moves to put on control. What is your feedback to this methodology? What can you share?
Well, I completely understand probably their direction and maybe a need for that. I would recommend not capping dollars, but actually capping the weight. And the reason being, and the why we would, give them that guidance is that if you have two families with the same type of move, same packing needs, same weight and same size, if one's moving from California over to New York and the other one's maybe moving from Georgia to New York, the costs are going to be higher coming from California over to New York versus the shorter one of Georgia. You would want to make sure that they have the same experiences. And if one, if it's going to cost more, obviously, then they're going to get affected coming from California. So what we would recommend is do it based on the weight. That way it can be equal between the two families. There's a number of different things, one, just in keeping it within policy or policy dynamics, you can restrict items also that and watch that. So, rules of thumb, no lumber shipping, watch the tools. You may even want to watch, what kind of bulky items are going and such. So you'll see restrictions in that area. Other things that we tell them, be proactive on the home finding trip. The sooner that they can find a home and have that checked off their list, then the less need for storage. But, another really great program that we try to promote really strongly is the discard and donate. So that's a really great avenue to sit there and reduce the weight on the household goods shipment and go through everything. Do you want to keep it? Did you use it in the last year? And if you didn't, do you really need to move it? And then you can decide on those items if you want to donate them, give them to family, which I'm sure they all love. Those types of objects, it's options in reducing down. It saves the company move in dollars, but then also it saves that family from unpacking and moving things. I mean, I'll even say when I moved from from Seattle to Dallas, we went through that. And I think we still even got here and looked at things and decided, why did we bring this? So it's always a really good idea to go by weight and give the family the best experience, and companies can help them with that process too.
And if I recall, discard and donate also bears tax deduction possibilities. The
Absolutely.
Employee can, okay. Yeah. Mike, I want to come back to you because there are a couple things I want to touch on. First, the word shuttle comes up frequently in move programs. Can you explain exactly what that is and when it is necessary? And are there programs that carriers employ for their clients in regards to this shuttle area?
Absolutely. So for domestic moves, we commonly use 18-wheel tractor trailer equipment. And in the event we cannot get our tractor trailer close enough to a location to safely load or unload a shipment, we are forced to bring in smaller truck equipment to transfer the goods from that location to or from our truck. And that is, in fact, what a shuttle is. It's the shuttling, the extra handling, the truck-to-truck transfer of a shipment from one location to where the truck can park. You run into these situations quite commonly in metropolitan areas. So you think New York City, Boston, Washington, D.C.,
right.
Slam dunk, you're going to have a shuttle 9 times out of 10. But then you get into rural areas and you start to look at maps. And there's ways that we can forecast and figure out ahead of time if a shuttle might be needed. In-person surveys work. If we send a representative out to put together the inventory list prior to the move, they commonly can tell us, okay, we can't get a truck up to the home, or it's tractor trailer accessible, things like that. We also utilize Google Maps quite often, but the inherent vice with Google Maps is we might be able to tell that there's space in front of the home for our truck, but not realize that there are low-hanging trees and wires at the entrance to the neighborhood, which would prevent our truck from getting up there. So sometimes a shuttle is prompted by conditions not easily recognized on a map. As part of every shuttle that we perform and most carriers perform, we provide our clients with the reasoning for the shuttle, as well as proof that the shuttle did in fact take place, the truck-to-truck transfer proof. And that's in the form of a weight ticket showing a smaller truck versus a weight ticket showing that a larger truck was also employed on the move. We also can provide truck rental receipts commonly that show when we picked up the rental truck and when we took it back, to show that we used a smaller truck during the course of that order.
So all the support documentation. So again, while you are answering one question, this is kind of like a two-part that popped up. First, third-party specialty services are common during a course of a move. Can you share some examples of when those services could be needed? And, what are they? And are there any avoidance possibilities to what those may be, or at least a way to curb the overall expense?
I think that sounded like 3 questions, but
Okay.
we'll make it 2. All right. So third-party services. In our business, we try to keep our moving teams focused on the core components of a relocation, the packing of the boxes, the loading of the truck, working with the transferee. And we bring in outside technicians or third parties to handle any specialty services. And that's what we're talking about really when we say third-party services.
Right.
These services are dictated by the content of a shipment and are typically identified during the pre-move survey. Some examples include crating of a marble top or a glass top, or disconnecting and reconnecting appliances that a transferee is taking, and commonly televisions that are wall mounted or need to be packed by a technician. When you talk about cost avoidance, I think one of the biggest things that we've been talking with clients about is televisions, because when flat screen TVs came out, there might have been 1 in every 5 homes, and now you go in and every home has 5, and they're all wall mounted, and they all need to be taken down and hung back up. The reality is that you may end up spending more money to take a television down, pack it, move it, and rehang it at destination than it would cost just to leave the TV at origin and buy a new one for the transferee at destination. So things like that are creative ways that we can work together with our clients to try to mitigate some of the cost. But we feel as though from a third-party service standpoint, it is important for us to keep our teams of movers in the field focusing on the core components of the order and only, and not those specialty services.
So, well, I do have to say that just the coaching on the TV situation, I think that's excellent for cost avoidance, because it could be far less expensive, to your point, than creating several TVs. So, we're talking about these additional services, and that leads me to another question for the RMC side. So, Kathleen, auditing process, what exactly is, there are so many components, and Mike has talked about, support and reasons why, but how are these services and the overall bill actually audited from your side, the RMC?
Yeah, thanks, Bev. It really starts from the estimate. The team is looking over to make sure that these are approved policy components at that time. If there's something outside of the realm of the policy, then looking for an exception to in an approval from the account. Then it continues throughout the move. I think everybody can raise their hand that they probably get questions along the way where something pops up and they need to a crating shows up, or not that we've ever had this happen, but all of a sudden there's an additional amount of weight because somebody went and bought all new furniture before the move that wasn't on the estimate. And so things like that need to have approval, then those are going to continue out through the move and be noted properly. Once the invoice comes in, again, we want to match it up to the estimate, and then all the exceptions that may have come through the move, and make sure that everything's well documented. We're looking for, to make sure all the documents are attached: bill of lading, weight tickets, inventories, and then the accessorial sheet that's going to show the breakdown of all the services that were performed, and again, initialed by the client and the family and signed. And we want to make sure that the weight tickets match, so we always look at the gross and the tier weight, do some of the simple, double check those second set of eyes. But we do expect, our partners to, initial that step before it even gets to us, to make sure. And it's always, if you're in the accounting realm, it's always those extra set of eyes, the double check. And so, Mike, from your end, you have your team there that before they even hit the send and whatnot, what does your team do to make sure that when we receive it on the RMC side, that you're going to have all that attached to it?
Absolutely. And quite frankly, I say that the auditing process of a move starts from the day that we get the initial move order. We're always going back as a carrier and checking what services are pre-approved, what services do we have to seek approval for. And throughout the life cycle of a move, we're constantly going back to the policy matrices, we're going back to the contracts, we're going back to our clients to make sure that we have those authorizations in order. And I think that communication and proper documentation is key to proper billing, to make sure that you have a clean audit, because the last thing that any of us want is inaccurate billing, because it only causes issues for us and for our clients. So we're going through that process from the day we get the order all the way up until that invoice packet is sent. And it is looked at least a dozen times before we send it out.
Agree.
Agree. And I know we're kind of running long on this session, but I cannot not throw out this question because it's impacting both of our topics today. The fast turning real estate market, how has that impacted the overall move, Mike, and how that impacts cost?
I would say that the fast turning market is creating situations that is requiring customers and transferees to utilize storage more often than they typically would. You've got situations where transferees cannot line up their closings because they just won't line up, or they can't find a home to move into, and thus they need storage when typically they wouldn't. And I think that the other thing is you're seeing longer durations of storage as well, because people will sell their home at origin. They'll pack and load and go to destination, and it'll take them longer to find the home that they want once they get there. And so the biggest cost impact I'm seeing from the real estate side is the increased prevalence of storage and the increased duration of storage.
Agreed.
So definite impact on overall cost